On October the 14th, 2017, around a week after the Harvey Weinstein scandal shook the world, Melissa Schuman tweeted a blog. With everyone in the media discussing SH/SA, I thought it was time to share my own experiences. In this blog titled The Harvey Weinstein Effect, she talks about the Hollywood culture for women and attributes her lack of success throughout her career to her strong moral convictions. On November the 2nd, 2017, she published her blog titled, "Don't Worry, I Won't Tell Anyone," accusing Nick of SA while they worked on the film The Hollow in 2003. It didn't get much traction. That was until she posted a link to that blog on Twitter, writing, "I'm not afraid anymore, #MeToo," on November the 18th, 2017. At that point, it only took 3 days to go viral and make international headlines.
Since Melissa's original blog was posted, there have been numerous story changes, and it's always been disturbing how comfortable Melissa is changing details of her story, assuming she can insert the word trauma and everyone would have to accept it. While we will go into a few things later in this video, we're not going to go through all the inconsistent aspects until down the road closer to trial.
I know we say this over and over throughout this video, and it's because Melissa, Shannon and their witnesses have to go through depositions, and during the trial they give their testimony on the stand. We want to get their full stories to get a full picture before we can break it down thoroughly. That includes the extensive smear campaign aspect that involves many individuals, advocacy groups and law firms.
We'll also go into Melissa's claims of harassment, her persistent attempts to seek media attention and efforts to be known for this, and overall how she claims full ownership over Nick. But for now, we're going to go through a few videos and posts that have been floating around since 2017.
Some Melissa supporters in the past brushed these things off, said it wasn't evidence, and accused Nick supporters of victim blaming or perpetrating grape culture. Although official admissible evidence has not yet been decided, most of these have been presented in Nick's counterclaim as evidence, as it should.
While we know there isn't a one-size-fits-all with victims of abuse, and we know sometimes victims go back to their abuser, remain close, and harbor positive feelings, this is common when there's a close relationship attached. We have to look at what applies in Melissa's case. Melissa has said repeatedly that at no time did she have any positive feelings towards Nick. Among many things, she claims she wanted to press charges, never wanted to be anywhere near him, she experienced PTSD, she even wrote a blog comparing hating Nick to hating Brussels sprouts. And as we go through these posts, you'll see that every explanation she's given follows the same feelings towards Nick. It's probably the one thing she's said that's remained consistent.
The first thing many people noticed was that Melissa was following Nick on Twitter. He was not following her. She basically replied and said that she wasn't aware she was following him. So take that as you will. In July of 2017, around 4 months before her public allegation, Melissa added The Hollow to a playlist on her YouTube channel. That was the movie she worked on with Nick, where the supposed incident took place. She even liked tweets that related to The Hollow in 2016. And going back to her MySpace days, she included the unreleased song There For Me. This was a duet she recorded with Nick and sang with him at a showcase, which happened to be 1 year after the assault she claimed took place. And it was the first time she stated she saw him after filming The Hollow. She even liked a tweet referencing that duet in 2012. In 2010, someone asked Melissa if she still kept in touch with Nick Carter. She replied she hadn't seen him in a few years and added he was a talented guy. This was something she didn't need to include. In 2012, she sent condolences to Nick after the passing of his sister Leslie. It's important to note that she was the one who began that interaction. On September the 6th, 2017, Melissa posted a video on her channel where she says that music from the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC and Britney Spears give her the warm and fuzzies.
Music that you grow up listening to, you're naturally is going to make you feel better. The music from the 2000s or even the 90s is very nostalgic for me. It reminds me of my childhood. I was a kid at that time, so they bring back the warm and fuzzies. NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and good old Britney Spears.
In this IG Live from May of 2017, Melissa is asked if she heard about Nick Carter's dad. who had passed away about a week prior.
No, what happened with Nick Carter's dad? Please tell me it's positive. I'm excited for this new show, Boy Bands. Hopefully it's as good as like American Idol and stuff. I'll have to Google what happened to Nick Carter's dad. Oh my gosh, no it didn't. Oh my gosh. That poor guy has gone through so much. His sister, now his dad. Poor guy. He's been through it, man, I'll tell ya. It's so sad. Yes, Boy Band is going to be amazing. I can't wait for it. It's going to be so fun. I was surprised. Is Nick the only judge on that show? That's so nice, Jay. Yes, we all should be praying for him. Aaron Carter. Aaron's a hoot. I love it. I love it. You're just like so in tune. I love it. Jenna's always on top of it. Yes, Baby Spice, so Emma's on it. I saw that.
When she explained this, she is referencing that she did have an interest in being a judge on the show Boy Band, which Nick appeared on as a judge. But she said it was prior to her knowing Nick was attached to it, and she only found out about it when someone on the live stream brought it up. And she said she didn't have the privilege, to be honest.
But that's not true. She brought it up after she asked,
No, what happened with Nick Carter's dad?
and she's waiting for someone to tell her.
I'm excited for this new show, Boy Bands.
Which means she did know at least prior to this live stream that he was attached to it. And she added that she was excited about the show. Melissa chose to add on throughout this entire interaction, when she could have kept it simple and sent her condolences.
This video was posted on March 15, 2017. It's from the Backstreet Boys residency in Vegas. They're performing the song The One, and a good portion of this video is focused on Nick, who is laughing and seemingly having a great time. Melissa said she was managing Dream at the time and was trying to drive traffic to her and Dream, so her replying to this was purely a business decision, doing whatever she could to survive. Funny part is, this was posted in 2017 and Dream had publicly disbanded in 2016.
After disbanding, they left their group page open to share memories, and that's all you see on their page from that point forward. And while it was said that Melissa and Ashley wanted to continue with the group, there was never mention of new projects at any time. And in 2017, Melissa didn't have a lot of activity on her own page either. She has a total of 3 posts on her Instagram page from all of 2017. She said she commented and liked posts to drive traffic, but what exactly was she driving traffic to? And Melissa's not well known. If she wanted to promote herself, she would know you need to mention who you are or what you're promoting. Melissa simply commented that she liked the video and was glad they shared it. She said she did this to survive, but she would rather comment and like posts of her grapist over posting regular content herself. Or she could have chosen to comment on the various other pop acts from the 2000s with fan pages. Overall, this felt like a failed attempt to make something up after getting caught enjoying a video of Nick. And that's a common theme with almost every clarification she's tried to give. Not only does that make this post questionable, but every other post and explanation she's given that constantly positions herself as this ignorant poor victim who could not avoid Nick.
This was posted on Melissa's IG in 2016 and deleted right before her allegation. Many people had seen it, and some commentary that went along with it. Someone had reposted it back in 2016 with Melissa's old IG handle. In this post, the duet Melissa sang with Nick is playing in the background, and Melissa had written positive words about him. When she's been questioned about this post, she's avoided explaining it.
Melissa liked this post from 2016, referring to Nick and her husband as DILFs. Melissa said she only liked this tweet because her husband was also mentioned. But she didn't have to like this tweet at all. It's really easy not to like a tweet where your supposed rapist is mentioned as a DILF.
That is curious. And speaking of her husband Brandon, Nick and AJ appeared on Lip Sync Battle in 2016, where Brandon was a part of that show as a backup dancer. This is what he posted on his personal Instagram. Melissa said Brandon did that because he had to promote the show, but he didn't promote every episode on his personal page, and Gigi Hadid was a celebrity on that show. Nick and AJ only appeared as surprise guests, and the funny part is, even in his caption, he used the point, "The boys are back," and they focus on the fact that Nick and AJ appeared on the show. This raised a lot of eyebrows and caused a lot of questions.
Melissa has said that she told her bandmates of the incident with Nick. And in 2018, she said that during the My 2K tour, which Dream was part of, that they would have members from other groups join them on stage, and she never knew who would show up. She said she told her bandmates that she didn't think she'd be able to perform or function had Nick been one of the people who showed up.
And I remember telling the girls, like, I don't know what I would do. I don't think I'd be able to perform. Like, I don't think I'd be able to function. Had somebody else showed up.
And that brings us to 2015. Melissa's group page, Dream, tweeted Merry Christmas to Backstreet Boys and expressed missing them. Now, not only is it odd for Melissa to express missing her supposed rapist, I would not express that sentiment towards my friend's rapist. Also in 2015, Melissa and her bandmate Ashley did an interview where they go through their summer throwback playlist. One of those songs was I Want It That Way. This is what they had to say.
I Want It That Way by Backstreet Boys. Okay,
Another one of the youngins.
this is a guilty pleasure. And you know what? I'm not the only one. I've seen grown men dance, cry. No, but recently, like with their kids.
Normally, there aren't any direct witnesses to an SA. In this case, however, there were two other people present in the small apartment and in this same room where the alleged incident took place. Those there were Nick's friend at the time, Tony, and Melissa's roommate at the time, Rachel, the two most important witnesses, besides Nick and Melissa, of course. Since Nick's counterclaim has included some details with these witnesses, we're going to go into a few things. One significant change from Melissa's original blog is when she wrote that she never told anyone about the alleged SA for at least a few weeks, including her roommate Rachel. But around 1 month after she wrote her blog, Melissa appeared as an exclusive guest on Dr. Oz. On Dr. Oz, she claimed she told her roommate the day after it happened, and then told her roommate's mother.
You mentioned that you spoke to people about it afterward. To who?
To my roommate, and then she took me to go talk to her mother. And then it was her mother that sat me down and explained to me what was happening. And I was in disbelief. I still was in, she had encouraged me to go to the police. She had encouraged me to go get a rape kit.
But all the people you mentioned confirmed what you said. So I know you told people who were close to you that night.
Yes.
This was quite a significant change in her story, and a lot of people have pointed that out to Melissa since 2018. In Melissa's declaration, she explains that Rachel, her roommate, had called her before she went on to Dr. Oz and reminded her that Melissa told her after it happened. Before I did the interview with Dr. Oz, I received a telephone call from my former roommate, Ms. Green. Ms. Green told me she had read my blog and was calling to offer her support. During our conversation, we discussed the night of Carter's assault and the days and weeks that followed, and she reminded me that, contrary to what I had written in my blog about not telling her about the assault until weeks later, I had in fact told her about the incident shortly after it occurred. She reminded me that she took me to speak to her mother and that her mother had urged me to go to the police and get a rape kit.
Again, we will go into Rachel and her mother's conflicting statements down the road. But going back to Melissa's original blog, it's not as if this is a detail that's completely missing. And Melissa has said she took a lot of time writing her blog and only included things that she remembered vividly.
And I wanted to make sure that everything that I wrote was something that I vividly remembered.
So this conversation with Rachel is one of those things. Rachel says, "That was so much fun." Melissa replies, I just want to go home. I'm tired. I just want to go to sleep. And Melissa makes it a point to say, I didn't tell her. I didn't want to even admit what happened was real to myself. Then she acknowledges it again. Over the next few weeks, I withdrew further and further from my friends and my family, and they noticed. And Melissa says, I still didn't tell anyone. So, per her own words, she remembered this conversation vividly, and she had the time to go back to that moment and that conversation. Melissa detailed exact conversations that took place between Rachel and her, even Nick and her during the showcase, but not the pivotal disclosure when she first talked about it and where Rachel's mother had helped her realize what had happened and encouraged Melissa to go to the police and get a grape kit. Later in the blog, she once again acknowledges when she told people. After the showcase she did with Nick, and when she wasn't signed with his manager, she says she told friends and family.
Another significant detail Melissa failed to mention in her blog was that Tony and, allegedly Rachel, were asleep on the floor next to the bed where the alleged incident took place. But why would Melissa fail to mention in her original story that there was an actual direct witness to her alleged SA?
One could speculate that it's possible Melissa didn't want to include a direct witness that could potentially go against her version of events. So if Tony had come forward and said he was asleep on the floor, she could say he was lying, and it was an attempt to protect Nick. But after Melissa found out that Nick and Tony had a falling out years ago, she might have thought she could convince Tony to go along with her version, which is not out of the realm of possibilities given Melissa's past actions.
And this brings us to December 18th, 2017. Melissa reached out to Tony via Facebook Messenger, attempting, we believe, to recruit him to corroborate her story. It was during this exchange Melissa admitted that Tony was on the floor just a few feet away.
We're just going to bring up one significant part of this conversation as it highlights the previous point. Keep in mind, these messages were from December 18th, 2017, a little over a month after she wrote her blog, and a few weeks after her Dr. Oz appearance, where she changed her story of telling her roommate Rachel and her mother. In this message, Melissa says, I remember you on the floor in the room I was in with Nick. I never knew if you were asleep or not. I always hoped that you weren't, so you could validate my story. This wasn't something she just remembered. She specifically says she had always hoped he was awake for the purpose of validating her story, which means she knew he was asleep on the floor in the same room and purposely left this detail out of her blog. We'll go deeper into this when we break down Melissa's story. And despite repeated efforts, she was not able to persuade Tony to validate her story.
Melissa also claimed in her blog that she told her then manager Niles Larson about the incident in 2003 and that she wanted to press charges. On February the 7th, 2018, Melissa filed a police report. During the police investigation, Niles Larson was questioned. In this, Niles stated he is a manager in the entertainment industry. I asked Larson if he ever represented Melissa, and Larson said, Schuman? Larson told me he represented Melissa from approximately 2002 to 2005. I asked Larson if he knew what I was investigating. Larson told me he read a blog a few months ago regarding Melissa and a grape. I asked Larson if he knew any information regarding that allegation. Larson told me he heard about it for the first time ever after reading that blog. I asked Larson if Melissa ever mentioned anything to him regarding any incidents while he was her manager. Larson told me that grape is a very serious thing and that he would have remembered if Melissa ever told him anything about a grape. Larson told me he was confused because he never heard about the incident until he read about it in a blog a few months ago. Larson also told me Melissa elected to be represented by a different manager in 2005. Johnny Wright, the same manager that had managed the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and others. Larson stated that he thought it was odd to find out about the grape since Melissa sang a duet with Nick Carter sometime after he stopped managing her. Larson told me he did not want to discredit Melissa, but did not have any information as he only found out about the grape a few months ago. While all the evidence we've seen through the years give us a firm belief that Nick did not grape Melissa, we have speculated on whether Melissa made up this allegation completely in 2017 or she regretted sleeping with him in 2003 and then claimed it was grape. While we lean more towards the former, it wouldn't come as a surprise if she did feel regret back then. She has given the impression that after this night with Nick, he had somewhat lost interest in her. Melissa has spoken at great length about her strong Christian values and being a virgin at the time. So if she did hold these strong values, giving that up to someone who held no future relationship with her could lead her to regretting that decision. She also spoke about the importance of her career at that time and how she realized at 18 she had to use her body to get ahead.
As I neared closer to my 18th birthday, I started to pick up on this sort of silent understanding by those around me that success would come at the expense of the exchange of my body.
We think it's very possible she thought sleeping with Nick would help her get ahead in her career. But when that didn't come to fruition, not only could that lead to regret, but she may have harbored some resentment towards Nick that grew in 2017 when her career was at a complete standstill and she wasn't sure how to maintain a career in the industry.
On April 11th, 2023, when a lot of the headlines from Shannon's lawsuit died down, Melissa filed a lawsuit against Nick. In a predictable fashion for the Schumans, this was the day before the anniversary of I Want It That Way. But more notably, this was the day before Nick's wedding anniversary. So all the headlines on that day were of Melissa's lawsuit. There were also some hints that the Schumans wanted to interfere with any Backstreet Boys 30th anniversary celebrations, which was later that month on April 20th. This lawsuit was filed in California under the recently enacted Sexual Abuse and Cover-Up Accountability Act, also called AB 2777.
To quickly summarise, this is a limited time legislation that allowed survivors to file a civil lawsuit that normally would be time barred by the statute of limitations. However, this would mean that a cover-up would have to have taken place. Per the strict guidelines, the plaintiff must allege the following factors. In Melissa's initial instant action, Melissa's claims did not fit the requirements under AB 2777. After extended delays on October 16, 2023, Melissa finally filed her first amended complaint against Nick, once again listing Nick, but this time adding in her suit, an entity Nick controls, known as Retract Inc., doing business as Chaotic Productions. In her attempts to claim a cover-up, Melissa is trying to use Shannon's weak allegation to meet the criteria of an attempted cover-up from a previous allegation. Due to the Nevada lawsuit involving all of the same individuals and evidence, Nick has filed a stay to this LA lawsuit, which would put this case potentially on hold until the Nevada case is decided.
I believed it was impossible to safeguard myself from his control and his influence.
Of the many things we'll discuss regarding Melissa, you may have noticed that she tends to portray Nick as a powerful celebrity who has a lot of influence within the industry.
My life and my family's lives have been at risk ever since.
But he's nowhere comparable to the likes of, let's say, Diddy or Harvey Weinstein. They built empires that allow greater influence within their respective industries. While Nick is part of a beloved band and has a devoted fan base, he wasn't at the height of his career in 2003 with that type of power, which they do know.
The Nick Carter at the period of time that we're talking about, and he wasn't famous. He was at the end of his freaking rope. He wasn't at the beginning of his rope. Give me a break, okay? And the bottom line is, that's the reality.
And he still doesn't today. But what benefit would it have to Melissa to compare Nick to these moguls within Hollywood, when it's safe to say he doesn't fit that description?
We think it's so she can attach herself to the experiences of their victims and place unwarranted blame onto Nick.
On September 27, 2023, Melissa posted a statement on all her social media platforms following the Nevada court denying her anti-SLAPP motion. That was their attempt at getting Nick's counterclaim against her and her father Jerry dismissed.
The statement included these claims of power and influence from Nick. Schuman and her father are appealing the ruling and will continue their legal defense against Carter's use of this Nevada lawsuit as an attempt to silence them and violate their First Amendment rights. Melissa also added to the statement, It's a desperate attempt to use his celebrity media access to mislead the public and scare survivors. But is there any truth behind these statements?
These can be common experiences from victims of powerful men. And as we said, it's no surprise Melissa will try to personalize something that doesn't apply to her. Her statements are designed to influence the public into disregarding Nick's case. And keep in mind, this is only a small portion of Melissa's manipulation. She also failed to include an important part of the judge's order allowing Nick's counterclaim to move forward, probably because it goes directly against her statement.
The court concludes that the evidence Carter submitted in the support of his opposition, in the form of approximately 92 exhibits, including affidavits and declarations, is sufficient to meet his statutory burdens. Carter's counterclaim was compulsory, given the causes of actions asserted against him, as set forth in the complaint, and was not brought to harass, intimidate, or for an improper purpose. In summary, the judge found Nick provided enough evidence for his counterclaim, and that his counterclaim was not filed as a way to harass, intimidate, or silence Melissa.
But was Melissa ever silenced?
Well, if we look back, Melissa was able to tell her story repeatedly on various public platforms, mind you, with no real evidence to back up her claims, not only in regards to the alleged SA, but also her allegations of harassment and cover-ups she spins from after she came forward. So, in reality, Melissa has never been silent, nor has she ever been silenced.
And on the other side of the spectrum, prior to the lawsuit, Nick had not spoken publicly about the allegations, apart from his initial public statement denying it. And now that Nick finally has the opportunity to defend himself, with evidence and through the legal system, 5 years after suffering in silence with false narratives thrown at him, she's pushing that he's trying to silence her. This all feels like a calculated attempt to villainize him and take away his ability to fully defend himself.
As we've already mentioned, Shay and Ashley both got involved with the Schumans in 2019 to join their smear campaign against Nick. And we noticed that they all had similar story changes during that time. To tie into the beginning of this video, there was an attempt to lend credibility to their allegations by creating a pattern with Nick, so he resembled other prominent alleged predators in Hollywood who had a long history of abusing women in a similar way. Along with each of these accusers' stories becoming more aggressive, they all made it a point to allege that Nick specifically infected them with HPV. HPV was never mentioned in any of their original stories, and HPV is very common for anyone who is sexually active. None of them have supported this claim with any proof of how they know Nick infected them with HPV. Ashley, in particular, was sexually active with multiple men during the same time frame, so it's impossible for her to attach her alleged infection to Nick. And around 2017, Shannon was seen by Family Healthcare while living in Utah, and she tested negative for HPV. Let's not forget their assertion that Nick targeted them because they were virgins, which is already inconsistent with declarations provided indicating that Ashley wasn't. They're also all specifying a particular alcoholic drink provided by Nick, cranberry juice and vodka, a type of VIP juice, as Shannon has alleged, or they are now alleging that Nick drugged them. One thing we have learned about Melissa is she takes a lot of ideas from other people. Many of the patterns we've seen are influenced by other allegations within the industry. The impact of surviving R. Kelly ignited Melissa into getting her own documentary release that would garner the same success.
Fallen Idols, which is produced by Isha Entertainment, looks set to be a hit piece aimed to assassinate Nick's character and further defame him in the eyes of the general public. And it comes as no surprise they have even in death used Aaron Carter to sell their allegations.
This documentary is already clouded in controversy based on the unethical practices of the production. They attempted to mislead Backstreet Boy fans and other potential participants about the true agenda behind this documentary. Their effort to try and con fan involvement included falsely claiming that they were a Backstreet Boys documentary about superfans. This clearly was not their purpose. The trailer alone is riddled with falsehoods and overdramatic. Even with civil lawsuits lawsuits pending, Melissa, Shannon, Ashley, and Jerry continue to show zero respect for due process.
We do look forward to a time when someone gives us a story worth telling, because the truth is far more compelling.
What level of depravity must these accusers possess to do what they have done to Nick? The emotional toil is hard to fathom. Having already overcome so many obstacles throughout his life, his perseverance is inspiring, and he only managed to become a better, more centered person along the way.
We do hope one day Nick tells his story in his own words, because there's no one else that can do it justice.